This is Minoka. Governor Root, are you on the call yet?
Yeah, Minoka, I'm here.
Great. And I think we have the other members, so if you are ready to get started, it's, I think I've got 10:01.
Great, okay. Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. For the members of the public, and actually for everyone, if you would make sure that if you are going to silence your phone, you use mute rather than hold so we don't have music playing for the rest of us, we would really appreciate it. And Minoka, would you please call the roll and determine which members of the committee are on the phone and make sure we have quorum, but also let's see what other members of the Board of Governors have joined us this morning.
Thank you. I will, Governor Root. Okay, Chair Root, I hear you. Vice Chair Frost?
I'm here.
Governor Chopra?
Present.
Chair Colson?
Here.
Governor Lautenbach? Governor Lautenbach? Governor Morton?
Here.
And Governor Webster. Governor Webster? Okay. You have a quorum, Governor Root, for the committee. I will check and see who else is on the call. Vice Chair Hosseini? Governor Beard?
Here.
Governor Carter? Governor Fossey?
Morning, everyone.
Governor Huizenga? Governor Kuntz? Governor Levine? Governor Link? Governor Stewart? Governor Tripp?
Thank you, Minoka.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know, Frank Rogan just signed on.
Chancellor, it's good to have you at our committee meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
good to be had.
And thank you for giving me a break from the movers. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll try to be brief so you can get back to work. This morning, and I'm going to start with a few comments on what we've been through, where we've been, and hopefully where we're going. First of all, I think we need to give a special thanks to the legislature and Governor Scott for their support of this initiative. It's been a great pleasure working with that group over the last probably year as this has been coming in for a landing. In particular, Will Weatherford and his staff have been just great. They have embraced online learning, and they're looking for ways to make this initiative really a game changer in how we address this subject. As most of you know, they funded, or they were the driving force behind the funding of the Parthenon Group study, and that information really gave us the background and helped ensure that we're making the right decision as we jump into this new field. And then ever since then, they've worked side by side with us, and they've really been great to work with. Let me also thank the members of the newly formed advisory board, Carlos Alfonso, Dr. Watchett, and Ernie Friend. That group has met, I think, 5 or 6 times over the last several months, read countless documents, provided great insight. They all have experience in this area. They provided great insight to the University of Florida, and the plan is much better due to their involvement. Today, the committee is going to discuss the fruits of all of that work, and that's the UF's plan for the Online Institute, which is now called UF Online. As you can see in the agenda material, after these meetings, we are now prepared to come forward and present the plan. And the plan itself, I can assure you, is innovative. It's got high standards. We focused on accessibility, affordability. We've looked at the best practices from online institutes and universities throughout the country. We're really working at making this a transformational approach on how we provide high-quality education online. Another thing I'd like to mention is that through this process, we encourage the University of Florida to look for opportunities for public-private partnerships. We wanted to make sure that we utilize the best those that were the most experienced in this field, to ensure that we would be successful. With an initiative like this, no one felt, including the University of Florida, felt it was a time to learn what we're doing on the job. So we've got some great partnerships that are being developed, and those are going to be very important as we go forward. On September 16th, the advisory board recommended that the Board of Governors approve the plan as submitted today. And our goal is to take the advisory board's recommendation into consideration at the committee, discuss the plan, and make a committee recommendation for board action. And just a reminder, immediately after adjournment of this committee, the Board of Governors will be convening to consider the committee's recommendation. Before I go to the next agenda item, which is turning it over to the University of Florida and Provost Glover, I want to, in particular, thank the University of Florida, as well as and the President, of course, for the support and the incredible hard work in a short time. When you think about it, it wasn't until after session on July 1st, when this legislation went into effect, that they could really run with it. And between that point and now, they've come just a long way. And then when you think that, or you realize that classes will actually be starting in January, it's amazing, what they've been able to do. So I thank Joe, thank you and your team and Andy, and just have really appreciated all you've done and enjoyed working with you. So with that, let me turn it over to Provost Glover, and he will present the plan for UF Online. Joe?
Well, thank you, Governor Rood. And let me begin by expressing my thanks to the Board of Governors, to the legislature, and the governor for this expression of confidence in the University of Florida by assigning to us this responsibility and this privilege to develop really one of the first fully online four-year baccalaureate degree programs in the United States. It's a great opportunity for us, and I would like to publicly commend all the members of the staff here at the University of Florida who worked very, very hard on this. I'd also like to express my thanks to the advisory board, which was chaired by you, Governor Rood, for all of the input and the immense amount of dedication and time that you've devoted to helping us to improve and present a business plan which will best service the needs of the state of Florida. So in a moment, I will pass this over to Andy McCullough, who will give you an overview of the business plan, but I'd like to make just a few introductory comments before we pass on to the particulars of the plan. We really do look forward to the opportunity to offer access to state-of-the-art online degree programs that are full four-year baccalaureate degree programs at a reduced tuition. As most people on the call probably know, per statute, tuition for Florida residents will be 75% of normal residential tuition. We are prepared to start off with 7 baccalaureate degree programs on January 1st, and we're committed to the full and further development of UF Online. One of the things that we did recently as part of that commitment was we hired as executive director of UF Online Betty Phillips, who is currently the provost at Arizona State University and who has tremendous experience in developing the online programs at Arizona State University. So we expect her to be a wonderful addition to the team. She's a very dynamic leader, and we expect that she will be leading the initiative beginning in January when she arrives on a full-time basis. In 10 years, our aspirational goal for UF Online is to enroll 24,000 students, generating 310,000 student credit hours and about $76 million in revenue. We believe this is an achievable goal, and just as some small indication that this is realizable, I would like to point out that last year UF generated $75 million in online revenue purely from its graduate and professional programs that are already online. Now, before I turn it over to Andy, I do want to address one issue that I know is on the minds of several board members. I want to emphasize that UF is fully committed to maintaining the quality of its educational programs. UF will not compromise on the rigor of its baccalaureate degree programs, and UF Online students will receive the same diploma upon graduation as residential students. Consequently, UF will continue to accept only those students who can accomplish and fully benefit from these degree programs. As you know, UF is determined to increase its national profile among public research universities through the Preeminence Initiative, which we also thank the Board of Governors, the legislature, and the governor for approving. We believe that the goals of UF Online are consistent with that program and contribute to that program. As we engage the same holistic admissions process we use for residential students, we expect an excellent class of capable students whose performance in the university and after graduation will further burnish the reputation of the university and the state. Having made those introductory comments, I would like to pass the gavel or the podium, if you will, over to Andy McCullough, who will talk a little bit more about the business plan that the advisory board has reviewed and approved at this point. Andy?
Thanks, Joe. And before I get into the details or the overview that I would like to share with the committee, I would be remiss if I did not reiterate what Joe has already said concerning the assistance of the advisory board in the fully developing this business plan. The interaction really was marvelous and helped us bring to the table what I think is a business plan that is consistent with the legislative intent and compatible with the ethos of a Research One university. Having said that, I hope you have had a chance, an opportunity to peruse the plan that was submitted. What I'm going to do is to provide a relatively brief and eclectic summary of that plan and then open the floor for questions or comments. So as I go along, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt, or we can address those after I finish my brief overview. First of all, as you know, but let me reiterate, the student population that we intend to serve will be those that are seeking an undergraduate degree, either first time in college or transfer, in-state or out-of-state students. These students will be required, as Joe has said, and we will reiterate more than once, that they will be required to meet the same admission standards the residence campus must meet. Our marketing is going to be both informative and attractive. We are employing the marketing services of national marketing firms. We intend to be talking to possible student enrollees in the state, in the region, in the country, and internationally. We have already organized our enrollment management processes and are continually doing so. We have now in place a contact center. This contact center is going to be the dedicated hub of online student information so that all applicants can go to a place for admissions and registration and financial aid information on a personalized basis. In terms of the curriculum, it is important to note that the University of Florida faculty will have full content responsibility, both in terms of the origin of the curriculum, the delivery of the curriculum, and oversight of the quality of that curriculum. We intend to have ready for delivery on the 1st of January 2014, 5 programs as stated in the business plan, but since the business plan went into print, we have managed to accelerate our production activities so that now we're going to deliver 7 programs, the 5 that are listed in the comprehensive business plan, plus psychology and biology. The curriculum that we will deliver over the next X number of years will have to meet one or both of the following 2 tests. That is, the curriculum will be responsive to workforce needs and student demand. And the plan is to increase the number of majors offered by 5 on an annual basis until 6 or 7 years out. We will have what we believe are 35 important major opportunities for our online students. Just a brief note as to the production. We currently have 24 courses that are in production, going either from face-to-face to online or upgrading previous online. By the time we open for business in January, we will have some 42 courses available for students who have enrolled at that point to participate in. The major challenge for us in production has not been so much getting enough courses up, but how to deal with the courses that come to the table with an emphasis on face-to-face, such as laboratories. We have, I believe, an appropriate solution for in-state students. We're going to be using IFA's Research and Education Centers. We have 11 of those sprinkled around the state from Homestead to Milton. We also have an option of a lab-intensive term during the summer here at the university for those who can take advantage of that. So we're going to be doing face-to-face small enrollment laboratories so that we can get into inclusion, so that we can include in our curriculum those STEM types of disciplines where laboratory experience is absolutely necessary. What I think is important for us to all appreciate and understand is that we're not hesitant to go. We're not hesitant to engage the type of curriculum. We will find solutions for the lab needs. We will not water down curriculum in order to accommodate this difficulty. So this is one of our production challenges, and we have, I think, an appropriate solution for in-state. We're going to have to come up with appropriate solutions for out-of-state and international. I should mention in passing that we are fully cognizant of the fact that educational experience for a student is not only what takes place in the classroom, but what takes place in what we sometimes call co-curricular. And our Division of Student Affairs has come up with, I think, some marvelous ideas that they're going to be implementing, which will include not only an expansive orientation, but a career resource online, a health section online, a wellness section, a recreational section. In fact, what we are doing with the student co-curricula is re-emphasizing what is critical for online students, and that is student engagement. Success, it has been proven over and over, for the online student is certainly in part determined by the extent to which he or she feels engaged. We know that, and we're going to make that happen. Academic integrity is an issue that comes up in online. We are out in front on that particular question. The standards for integrity will be the same as those that are in place for our in-resident students. I should tell you that one of the first things any faculty ask when they come to the online world is, all right, what about academic integrity? So we've been engaged in this conversation from the get-go. As you might imagine, there are entrepreneurial firms out there that are providing all types of solutions, some very good. We've been using ProctorU. We've used Safeguard. We use Criterion. All of these provide proctored oversight when testing takes place. We're also looking, of course, at innovative assessment processes that can overcome the problems associated with distance. Tuition, as you know, was specified by the legislation. The maximum tuition we can charge in-state students is 75% of resident tuition, which under current tuition levels is about $112 per credit hour. Out-of-state tuition, we will be allowed to look to market rates. Market rates, as we looked across our peers, currently vary anywhere between $400 and $500 per credit hour. You have had a chance to look at our budget. I will just offer up one or two observations. First of all, I am sure you are cognizant of the fact that when we put to paper a 10-year budget, we are including in those budgetary numbers a number of estimations as to the parameters that determine the outcome. But it is interesting to note that we are forecasting, as Joe has pointed out, 1,000 students in 10 years. generating revenues of $76 million, a net margin in the 10th year of over $14 million, and a cumulative fund balance of $43 million. We are not going to ignore. In fact, we will be emphasizing program and student evaluation. We have access to student analytics through our course management system, which we will be using, called Canvas. We are enrolled and active members in an evaluative system that is national in scope, Quality Matters. We are setting up a requirement for 3-year review and refreshment on every course. Every course is evaluated by every student enrolled each term, and that course evaluation includes not only responses to the content and the curriculum, but responses to the efficacy of the platform itself. We will be looking carefully as we develop our curriculum at the demand for and activity in the various majors. What we will be always looking for is a lean, responsive curriculum. We will not maintain curriculum for which there is no demand, either by students or workforce, and consequently we will be in touch with that from the get-go. One of the important parts of our opportunity to be participants in this leading edge of educational development is that it brings to light the opportunity for research. And since we are a Research One university, research is much of what we're about. We will be establishing a research center, and this research center will be dedicated to discovery and application. That is, we will be looking for new and better ways to deliver online learning, new and better understandings of the process of teaching and learning online. And as we push further in this, we will be establishing best practices, and it is fully our intent, as we have articulated to the Task Force on Post-Secondary Online Education, to share with our partners, both in the universities and colleges of the state, all of the outputs that we all of the results of our research. As a matter of fact, we have suggested that the research center have a board that would be populated by our partners. Finally, I should point out, as John had suggested, we are actively seeking engagement with a private partner. We are close to signing a contract, and I suggest to you that the contract will be signed will be soon, and the partner that we will be working with will be one of the most important public educational services unit in the world. They will bring to the table experience such that we will have when we come out of the gate, we will not have a learning curve. We'll have a partner in hand who knows and has been doing the things that are necessary to achieve excellence in this particular type of online learning. So that, I think, is a sufficient overview. I'm prepared to try to respond to any questions you may have. Joe, likewise, and I have some of the team sitting here with me in case I need their expert input, including the Vice President for Enrollment Management, Zena Evans, and the Vice President for Financials at the University, Matt Fajak.
Thank you, Andy. Great presentation. Members of the committee, are there any questions that you have either for Provost Glover or Associate Provost McCullough?
John Rood, this is Norman Tripp. Just want to tell you that I've joined you.
Hey, Norm.
This is Ned Lautenbeck. I'm impressed that you have a research project alongside to make sure we continue to be best of breed. That's very impressive. I'm glad you're doing that.
Thanks. Any questions from anyone?
John, Dick Beard.
Yes.
John, I've got a question, a comment, and a request. The question is, with 24,000 students, how many employees, full-time employees, will the university have at that time? that works specifically on this.
UF Online, dedicated to this process. Okay.
Right.
Andy?
It will be, at best, what I will give you is an estimation.
Well, I understand.
A guesstimation.
Right.
My suspicion is that when we reach that number of students, we will have a dedicated staff of, I'd say, 250. This would include faculty that are interacting with students, teaching assistants that are assisting faculty, administrative personnel that are engaged in enrollment management, evaluative personnel that are engaged in quality assurance. All of those kinds of people will be on the ground. Now, as you understand, some of the resources that will be used in delivering online will be resources that we will be leveraging in as much as they are already here on campus. We clearly are not going to overwork or put our resident assets to work beyond their efficient level, but there is a leveraging possibility that certainly we will take advantage of. But clearly we will be adding support and faculty in order to support a commitment to 24,000 students 10 years out.
Right. Well, here's my comment. There weren't any facilities spoken of in your report, and obviously some kind of facilities to house these 250 employees will be required, and you're going to need places to film the online courses and all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be some facility needs in the next 10 years. And the system is trying to figure out what online learning is really going to do for facilities around the whole system, because all the universities have some online capabilities, and we'll be growing that over the years. So my request is that I'd like for the University of Florida, as you can, as soon as you can, to try to get a real handle on how efficient online learning is for facilities, so that the system, number one, will be prepared to fund the facilities we need coming over the next 10 years, and secondly, so we'll know what's required, for the whole system, system-wide. So that's kind of my request. Since y'all are the first, maybe you can figure that out for us.
Yeah, well, I appreciate we appreciate your observation. You can be sure we have been concerned about the same question, and we are looking at the alternatives and options on campus now and trying to project what the possibilities will be in the future. I think your request we engage in the analysis.
Excuse me, Andy. If everyone that is not speaking would put their phone on mute, we've got some background noise coming through, and that might help.
Here. Yeah. Great.
So if everyone could put their phone on mute unless you're speaking, I think we've solved it. Andy, if you'd go ahead, please.
Sure. And I was going to finish up what I hope you heard when I was speaking through the background, that your suggestion or your request that we develop some notion as to what efficiency in terms of facility usage is or will need to be for online learning is right on target for us. Not only would it be useful, will it be useful for the system? Clearly we need to know that for ourselves, and we will share the development and research we do in that domain with all who are interested.
Well, it's clear that this is a high priority for the system, and I would think that once we know that the legislature will help us figure out a way to fund all this stuff, because we've got such funding issues going forward right now. So the faster we can have it, the faster we can attack it. So thanks so much for that.
Of course.
Thank you, Dick.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
John,
Chairman?
Yes. Tom?
Can you hear me, John?
Yes, I've got you. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. I dialed in late, so if this was covered, I apologize for being late and no need to say it again. But I'm wondering, so the question from Dick on how many employees there'll be and some of the support that's required. Is there somewhere, or have we discussed the cost to deliver for the projected students, what it will cost versus the cost of delivering a degree to a traditional on-campus student? And so is this more expensive or less expensive than our current delivery system?
Andy, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I will respond with some generalizations without putting numbers with it at this point. And the generalization goes like this, and I think this is borne out in the experiences of other institutions who have embraced or moved in the direction of online learning. And that is the cost per student online starts off, frankly, I believe, being more expensive than the in-residence student. But where you obtain savings or efficiencies is when the online delivery reaches scale. And that is, as the number of students that are served in a particular class goes from 10 to 100 to 1,000, the costs do not rise proportionally. So we begin to realize efficiencies at scale, and that is, of course, one of the reasons why it will be important for us as we deliver UF Online to engage the appropriate marketing and strategies that will allow us to attain scale. Now, as you can imagine, one of the things that goes with scale is the pedagogy, the understanding of how to interact with students when they're that large of a number, and keep them engaged and keep them learning and make a quality experience at the same time. So while we do realize some efficiencies, at the same time we will be employing some techniques in pedagogy that will maintain the excellence of the educational experience.
Thank you. I think one thing I might suggest, and I think that's a great answer, is we're going to need money. You're going to need money for this program, of course. And as the legislature is appropriating money, it might be helpful to have modeled, as you develop that scale, how this is a more efficient way to deliver a degree, because it seems to me if we can show that, or if you can show that, the likelihood of getting support for the additional funding will grow, because I would just assume somebody's going to ask the question, how much is this costing versus if we just didn't do it and continue to educate in-resident students, or even if it's more, and maybe we accept it's more, but we should know what we're getting into. But I agree with you. Once you achieve scale, it's going to become much more efficient through online, and I just think we ought to have those numbers, because I think it could serve you well going as you start to look for the money.
This is Joe Glover. I think it's worth recalling in this conversation also that when you look at the cost of the education to the student, about 2/3 of the cost of education to the student is just living at the university that they happen to be attending. And so in principle, the students, by staying at home or at their place of work or whatever, they're already realizing a huge savings from this. So I think that also has to be factored in as we have the conversation about cost.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I would show it both ways. I would show it the cost to the student and the cost for the university to deliver to the student, because I think in both cases it's going to be a pretty compelling argument once scale is achieved.
I agree.
And the other point I'd like to mention is, there are costs associated with production and delivery of the material, which, as there are in a traditional university campus. The other big savings comes from not having to build the classrooms, and that ought to be included in your analysis, Andy, when you try to compare one to the other. We don't want to forget the cost of that classroom, cost and operation of that classroom.
So noted.
Mr.
Any other
Chairman?
questions?
John,
Yes.
Norman Tripp, may I ask a question?
Sure, Norman.
The group, the advisory group that was set up originally, will that continue? And the reason I'm asking this is, do we have a process in place where we will get some independent evaluation ongoing as this is going on, so that we don't get way down the road and recognize that things may be going in a direction where they shouldn't be as far as the system is concerned?
Yeah,
And if they're not going to do that, should we consider some kind of a process where, as this is ongoing, there is an independent evaluation reporting back to us as well as the university?
Right. Right now, the independent advisory board will continue, and it will continue to provide oversight. It will report to the Board of Governors. The Strategic Planning Committee will also be very engaged, and as you can imagine, after 5 months, there are still a lot of questions. There's a lot of, you have to, but let's hope it's a scientific guess. It's a guess based on experience of other online universities, and it's a guess based upon consultation with the best in the industry. But there are still a lot of numbers that will change. And so we will, especially over these next couple of years, there'll be a lot of revisions to the plan, and there'll be a lot of attention to this. Whether or not we bring in somebody that does a special analysis, whether it's a Parthenon or somebody else, that's something that I think would be appropriate to discuss, in the months ahead. Maybe after, we get the first enrollment period data and get feedback on quality, and we assess the data that's being provided by the university, we can then make a decision on whether we need to bring somebody else in to provide more of an independent review. But I think that's a good thought, and one that we should follow up on.
Thank you.
Hey, Chairman?
Yes.
Chairman, hey, this is Alan Levine. I had 2 quick comments, if it's okay. I'm not on the committee, but I'd like to.
Sure. No, please.
First, and these are not questions, they're more just comments and observations. I think first, congratulations to the university and to the advisory committee that did put together a great proposal. And I just wanted to make sure, I know it's probably been discussed, and I was late, but my concern, obviously, having been, which I did discuss with Dr. Glover, the issue of possibly diluting the university's metrics as it relates to the expansion of online. And we talked about that, and I feel at ease that the university is just as concerned about that as I think some of us are, and we'll certainly be watching that. But I think that the point I wanted to raise for the Board of Governors is a conversation I think we should have at some point at a future meeting about whether we should or how to advocate at a national level, kind of separating out the metrics for online versus residential students, because the more this expands, the more difficult it's going to be, the more diluted the metrics are going to get. And universities that take the risk of getting heavily into online are going to wind up being penalized as it relates to rankings and everything else, should the students that are online have a different set of metrics in terms of their performance. And right now they're blended in if they're full-time. And I just think we ought to have a conversation about that. And I would pose the question at a future date as to whether or not the Board of Governors should take a formal position on advocating nationally for that.
Good point. Thank you. Good.
Governor Rood?
Yes.
This is Frank. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Governor. You first.
Thank you. I should add to the Board of Governors that I passed on in depth the following comments to staff. I've spent some time reviewing about 15 university online course programs, many of them in the Big Ten. I had a number of concerns that are not relevant to what I think is a very good start to the business plan. But I thought I'd just pass these on and let the Board of Governors know I've raised these issues with staff and with the management team. One, the brand elasticity of the University of Florida tested against some of the better universities in the United States as well that have begun these types of initiatives. This business plan is extremely dependent on significant success in online education outside the state of Florida. The financial feasibility study is predicated on disproportionate numbers of out-of-state students and the significant tuition, which we heard is $400 to $425 per credit hour. 2, the vulnerability of e-textbooks, which is also built into the feasibility study. If anybody can recollect what happened to music, it's happening with e-textbooks right now. Students are figuring this out, and the ability to share textbooks is going to be, I think, a significant challenge as we go forward. And again, I don't expect answer to that today, but these are issues that I did raise to the committee or to the management team. Third, the integration of online courses offered by other universities into our online menu. There's a great op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal today that I've asked to be distributed to the medical committee that Chairman Colson established at the last meeting. It has to do with 170 medical schools sharing digital content so that pre-clinical experiences didactic education, the cost can be reduced significantly. I think the same thing's going to happen in online education. I think, as Alan just mentioned, I think you're going to see some cannibalization of students going to the University of Florida, at least potentially. And as respects the investment, I would hope that the savings from these kinds of programs would reduce the overall cost of education such that we have a surplus and we can figure out other ways to spend that money in the state of Florida. Lastly, I'd like to ask one question and then one final statement. The metrics. As I looked at the metrics in the appendix, I didn't find any of the metrics which copied or were parallel to the Board of Governors as respects the programs that we're offering. Are we going to track the metrics of job probability or employment probability, the average starting salary, the cost of the program, et cetera, which I believe was also asked by Tom, the overall cost of the program. So if I missed that, I apologize, but I didn't see those kinds of metrics in the appendix. And lastly, I think that we need to be overly sensitive, or at least sensitive to what I'm going to call the challenges of picking programs that go into our initial course offering. I heard psychology and biology. Both those courses were the subject of extensive writing, some in the Journal and some in Forbes, about difficulty with employment with just degrees in undergraduate degrees in psychology and undergraduate degrees in biology. And I think we just need to bear that in mind, that just because a course may lend itself to online, we need to make sure that we don't lose focus, that the purpose behind this is to demand match our educational processes with the needs in the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, may I offer some response?
Sure, Andy.
First of all, I appreciate those observations, and they certainly are matters that we have been thinking about or will be thinking about. One thing I'd like to point out to you, when you go back to the appendix and look at the performance measures and benchmarks, if you look at number 11, you will see that this has to do with percent of online bachelor graduate students employed or continuing their education, median average full-time wages of undergraduate employed in Florida 1 year and 1 year after graduation. Certainly, you're right, and we are cognizant of the fact that if part of our rationale for offering a particular major is workforce needs, then we need performance measures and benchmarks that are related to that. And we have included at least one. There may be more that could be included. And I should point out that one of the things that we certainly plan to do, as John has pointed out, is continuing our work with the advisory board, continuing their advice and input as we perfect these performance measures and benchmarks. These measures and benchmarks are not just for the Board of Governors or for the Advisory Board or for the legislature. They are for us. We are concerned about excellence in terms of the product that we're delivering online. So these performance measures and benchmarks are not intrusive. They are inclusive in what we would do even if no one asked us to do that. Now let me go to your last point, and that is the inclusion of biology and psychology. First of all, I would point out to you that they are not necessarily easy to mount online. Biology brings with it laboratory requirements, wet lab requirements that we're going to have to be able to cope with. The reason when we had some additional productive capacity available, we turned to these is because they are the greatest demand majors on this campus by students. Now, part of that is because many of our students go forward into professional education, but also part of it is responsive to the workforce needs in this state and nationally in the health professions, whether it's nursing, whether it's health management, whatever. As you know, the health professions or the health industry is growing by leaps and bounds, and our students are fully cognizant of that. And even though they may not become MDs, they are cognizant of the fact that there is a demand out there, and that, I believe, is why these are the two most popular majors on this campus. It is not because they are easy to put online, I can assure you. It is because they passed one of what we required as a test, student demand and or workforce needs. In this case, I think they passed both tests.
Well, I guess the proof of the pudding will be then in metric 11.
Yeah,
correct. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Frank. May I?
Sure, yes, please.
I just wanted to, first of all, I'm not going to echo all the thank yous. I don't want to be redundant, and you don't have that kind of time, but if I didn't one, I would be mistaken, and that is the University of Florida. There's a misconception out there that the University of Florida begged for this opportunity, and I can tell you that's not true, although when thrust upon them, or at least in their direction, they have done an absolutely breathtaking job of picking up the gauntlet and running with it. What a marvelous job they've done, with much more to come. Having said that, I also wanted to re-acknowledge, because somebody mentioned it earlier, and I will during the regular board meeting on this, that there are two trains running right now. Those tracks will run parallel for a period, will ultimately bisect. The other train that I think Dr. McCullough mentioned was the post-secondary online education task force. If you all recall, the Board of Governors had two parts to the motion that was originally made beginning all of this work that ultimately ended up in legislation. One was the creation of the University of Florida as our lead institution. And among other parts of that motion were that University of Florida would agree, which of course they have, that they would serve as an R&D arm for our broader efforts within the state of Florida to look at how we operate all of online education. That means the task force, which came out not of the law, but as a part of that motion from the Board of Governors, which includes all of the other delivery systems in higher ed on the issue of online education, and is actively working as a group, and of course Dr. McCullough is a part of that group, an integral part of that group, that the University of Florida would be providing ongoing feedback to that group so that we can better and more efficiently operate all of our online educational programming in the state. Very important is the re-recognition of the fact that the University of Florida, and rightfully so, needs to maintain their admission standards for a variety of critical reasons, which as a byproduct will open up need for a huge number of other students. Frank Brogan would have been one of those who would not be able to meet those admission standards, but still wants, or very importantly, needs an online educational opportunity. So the Board of Governors, and I mean it, in their wisdom, agreed that we needed to, on the other track, run this effort to try to better coordinate, collaborate, access, affordability, and the quality of all of our online educational programming opportunities at any of our institutions in the state university system, our college system, et cetera. And I will say this, that work is going to be critical as it dovetails with what the University of Florida is learning on a curriculum side. But you've heard today Governor Beard talk about facilities issues. You heard Governor Kunz talk about variable costs to the student, to the institution, and issues of quality and affordability. I believe that there's an opportunity not only for the University of Florida here in their leadership role, but because of the University of Florida, to begin to better and more efficiently organize not only the development of online curriculum across the board, the programming that is developed and articulated, is it important, do we need to do it, and what is the return on investment for the students in the system that we're looking for and the state in terms of job production. And very importantly to that end, and I'll wrap up here, I promise, Governor, is the issue of back-of-the-house services. I call those back-of-the-house services, but if we don't do a better job of coordinating those issues of recruitment, admissions, financial assistance, advice and counseling, transcript advice and counseling, and I could go on this back-of-the-house service issue, and figure out how we can more organize it and perhaps even deliver some of it from a centralized function as opposed to an every man for himself approach, which relies on whatever resources people have and whatever expertise they have in the area. I think we're missing a golden opportunity for a population of students that will far outpace in-state and perhaps even out-of-state what the University of Florida is going to be doing based on the very important niche they're going to fill with those admission requirements. So I really put that challenge out there to all of us, reemphasize that it does come right from the Board of Governors, that they are actively working, and that group has to have the courage to be able to look at a way that we can divest ourselves of a very siloed approach, almost every man for himself on the issue of online education, which has produced massive volume, but I'm not sure about efficiency, quality, affordability issues at the same time, and see if we can bring these two train tracks together at some point in the future with the benefit of the University of Florida helping to lead that charge. So thank you for that commercial message, and I'm going to repeat some of that for the full board meeting because it is their motion that set it forward, and I think will be part of the great payoff in online education for our entire state with UF taking the lead. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chancellor. Unless there's any further questions, I'd like
Governor
to ask
Rood?
for yes.
I'm sorry, this is Manoj. I just have a very short question. Is all the content going to be in-house, or is there a plan to go out and get content?
Andy?
The responsibility for content is going to be in-house, but as was mentioned earlier, one of the things that we and other flagship universities are interested in is developing repositories where learning objects that are being brought into existence by online activities around the state, around the country, can be deposited for common use. We're talking to consortiums outside of the state, and we're talking through this same group that the Chancellor referred to about the possibility of a repository in-state. And that repository then will give us some efficiencies in terms of common use of learning objects.
This is Joe Glover. I just agreed this week to join a new Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, that's APLU, consortium on the production of and the sharing of online learning objects. So we fully intend to be one of the national leaders in this effort, and as I mentioned, a consortium is just about to be announced by APLU.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Andy.
Are there any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Moy Hassani. I have a quick question.
Yes, Moy.
Doesn't the bill that passed by the legislators calls for the cost of online to be no more than 75% of regular residents' cost per credit hours?
It calls for the cost of the residential tuition to be 75% of the normal cost for Florida resident tuition, and it does prescribe a limited set of fees that are to be charged.
So am I correct? So online should be no more than 75% of the residential?
With the exception of the fees. It allows for selected fees, but the tuition is 75% of what the on-campus student would be paying.
In-state only.
In-state only,
yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the committee or members of the Board of Governors? With that, I would like to ask if there is a motion to approve the comprehensive business plan for UF Online.
So moved.
Second.
Pat Frost makes a motion. And who made the second?
I did. Ned Lockenbach.
Ned seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
And anyone opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Well, before we conclude, just let me thank all of you for your work. Members of the committee, thank you for the numerous special meetings that you attended, for all your hard work in learning about a subject that is relatively new to most of us, and I think we ended up bringing this in for a landing at a great, great place. With that, we will adjourn the meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee, and I'm going to turn the telephonic gavel over to Chair Colson.